Hello, my name is Russell Myers. Welcome to Issues Unite. Before I get to the main topic today, I want to talk a little bit about Evgeny Prigozhin. All right, there's all these people that are saying that he's a hero, and all of this stuff, and the Russian military is ineffective without him. No, that first of all, he is a traitor. He is absolutely a traitor. By the way, the 1/4 or less of Wagnerians that were with him on his little uprising, his little adventure, have been sent to Belarus. They are in exile. They cannot return to Russia. They cannot come home. Ever. That's it. You think about that. They can't go back to their families or anything like that for the rest of their lives. So, Prigozhin is not in Belarus. He was in Rostov-on-Don, and now he has been summoned to Moscow. He was summoned to Moscow after his home was raided by the authorities, and they found stacks of money, including, and a lot of it was in U.S. currency. He gold and all this stuff, and if you see these pictures, just stuff stacked up, wigs, false beards. Yeah, it's very odd with some of that. But my question is, what did they find in his documents, including his electronic devices, which you absolutely know have been seized, with all of his talk about, there was no reason for this special military operation to occur, even though he was the most aggressive. By the way, he, in Bakhmut, he went against the orders of the Ministry of Defense. General Gerasimov, from the beginning of the battle for Bakhmut, said that Bakhmut was intended, he said this publicly, that Bakhmut was intended to be a meat grinder. He knew that the Ukrainians would just keep throwing men by the tens of thousands at Bakhmut, while Bakhmut was surrounded by Russian artillery and aircraft and all of this. The intent was just to keep it in a cauldron and keep firing at them as they kept on sending more people in. It was Prigozhin's idea to take the city against orders. He went against orders. And then he had all of these arguments, this media circus that went on, arguing with the Ministry of Defense. I was amazed that they even tolerated that. If an American general were doing that, he'd be recalled immediately. So they had a lot of patience with him. And he is not a military person by trade. He's a chef. He's a caterer. And his entire operation has been taken away from him, which provided meals for the Russian military and Russian schools. I mean, he was, and then the Wagner Group was a business. The Russians, Putin said that they spent over $1 billion US dollars. I don't know if it was dollars or rubles, but over $1 billion in 1 year on the Wagners. This was a profit machine for Prigozhin, even though he did not provide the weapons, the equipment, or any of this. So, he did not form the Wagners. He was given that position. Anyway, so I'd really love to know why he's been called to Moscow instead of just sent to Belarus. The Wagners that are in Belarus are supposed to train the Belarusian military and integrate with the Belarusian military because there is a large Polish force on the western edge of Ukraine that is just amassed there. And allegedly, the rhetoric is that this is to help the Ukrainians to defend themselves against Russia, and yet the Ukrainian, mega super duper, offensive is going on right now, and there they are over on the western edge of Ukraine. My suspicion is that they're going to come in and take the western part of Ukraine that was taken away from them at the end of World War II. And at the same time, Poland is demanding an apology from Ukraine for all of the Polish people that were killed by Ukrainian forces during World War II. So, put those pieces together. Anyway, so it's completely understandable. They want the Wagners to earn their keep. All right, so main topic, July 11th is coming. If you don't know what's happening July 11th, that is the NATO summit in Vilnius. This is where they're going to talk about, whether Europe, NATO is going to continue to supply Ukraine any further beyond that point. So right now, the Ukrainians are trying and pretty much failing to make advances, against the Russian defense lines. They've taken a couple of small villages, 10 buildings, an abandoned barn here, and an empty field there, and that's about the extent of what they've been able to achieve. And for that, they've been losing thousands of men per week. Minister of Defense Shoigu of Russia came up with a calculation that since the beginning of the military operation, the Ukrainians have lost 2,500 armored vehicles. That is just armored vehicles. That's not counting artillery pieces, anti-aircraft, radar systems. A lot of sources are saying, depends on who you talk to, but most calculations are saying that the Ukrainians have lost 300 to 400, some say 500,000 men in the course of this conflict. But right now they're losing 700 to 1,000 men per day. Now, I've said how I feel about this many times. I am against the Ukrainians dying. I'm against anybody dying. They need to negotiate peace. They need to honor the agreement that they made in March of last year, although they are not going to get Crimea back. They are not going to get the 4 regions that voted to rejoin Russia back. They're not going to get it. So, Zelensky literally signed a law to make it illegal to negotiate peace with Russia. Anyone that even mentions negotiating peace is considered a traitor, and they are arrested and thrown in prison. So right now, they're trying to show some kind of results with all of the equipment that has been given to them, which their results are like they've lost so many armored vehicles that armored vehicles are no longer approaching the front line. You know, infantry fighting vehicles, they're not most of the time they're not approaching the front line. They're pulling up far behind the front line and dumping off all of these foot soldiers, infantrymen, and the infantry is going in to face Russian artillery and drones and machine guns, etc. This is what they're facing. Yeah, and this is worthless. This is, you know, they're being slaughtered. I mean, their entire culture is being destroyed. Their entire heritage is going to be gone. For what? For lines on a map. Lines on a map. That's what they're fighting for. Lines on a map. But they're trying to show some kind of results. Being able to take territory, you know, is so that when Zelensky goes to this meeting on July 11th, he can say, this is what we've done with the equipment you've given us. Now give us more, give us more, give us more. But, you know, Brian Berletic of the New Atlas, Scott Ritter, Colonel Douglas McGregor, they've all said Europe and the United States don't have any more weapons or ammunition that they can actually give. Not enough for what is being burned up. There are plans to increase artillery production. That between the U.S. and Europe, they plan to be able to produce 2 million shells a year, but Russia's already producing 2.5 million shells a year, and they're still expanding production. So by, and this is supposed to be by 2025. By 2025, Russia will be producing 4 million shells a year. Russia already produces 1,500 tanks a year. The United States hasn't built a new M1 tank since 2012. So they're trying to show these results when he goes to this meeting, but so far, their first attempt failed. They took a pause, and 4 Ukrainian oblasts have announced a 100% mobilization. And these are the most populated, well-armed oblasts in the country, including Kiev, Lvov. These are the largest cohorts, and they've all been sent to the front lines. So once those are gone, there's virtually nothing left. But they've said that they would fight to the last Ukrainian. If you're fighting to the last Ukrainian, what are you fighting for? When it's completely possible to sit down and at least attempt some kind of peace negotiations. What is this for? What good is going to come of this? So the Ukrainians have not yet reached the Russian first line of defense, where all of the fighting is taking place right now is basically a buffer zone. You think of the first line of defense as being, the border and the area in front of it. Think of it like a house. The first line of defense is the house, and the where they're fighting now is the front yard. Okay, so most of the Russian forces that are in the Ukraine are behind the lines of defense. They haven't even been activated all at one time. They rotate out and take turns. One company switches out with another company and so forth, for to give each one a chance to rest and regroup, rearm, and be treated for wounds, all that kind of thing. This just keeps an effective force going. So most of the firepower, most of the heaviest firepower, most of the Russian forces are behind the defense lines. They're not up there on the front line right now. They're behind the defense lines. So the Ukrainians have not reached. I think the closest they've gotten is maybe 5 kilometers from the first defense line, but for the most part, they're 10 kilometers and more out. So the chances of them taking any kind of, having any kind of major victory is extremely low. There is some talk that, rumors, of course, that NATO countries might send forces into Ukraine. If that happens, then we literally have World War III, and Russia has not mobilized their entire military. They still have hundreds of thousands of troops still in Russia, in addition to the ones that are in Ukraine. And they have a much higher production capacity for ammunition and weapons than the entire West has put together. This is foolish. Oh, and let's talk about the nuclear power plant. Ukraine has been pushing this idea that the Russians are going to, cause some, false flag, or blow up the plant or something like that. And the International, Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, still does. They still have inspectors, pardon me, at the plant. And Rafael Grossi, the head of the IAEA, released a report that they inspected the entire plant, the grounds around the plant, and the roof, and there are no mines, there are no explosives, there are no bombs, there's nothing like that anywhere. There are no artillery, there's no armored vehicles, none of that. None of that is on the grounds of the plant. He finally came out and said it. Finally. So, and I have my own suspicions that the Russians have been quietly removing the nuclear fuel from the plant gradually over time. So if there is an attack on the plant, which the Russian forces are protecting. Why would they do this with their own forces being the ones at the plant and in the surrounding area? They wouldn't do that. You look at what Russia has done. They withdraw. If their forces, if their men are in danger, they withdraw and make a stand further back. They are not going to put their people in danger. That is the most important thing to them. So I think that the Russians have been removing the nuclear fuel, and the IAEA knows it, but everyone's keeping mum. So let's wait and see what happens. All right, share this video, talk about these subjects. If you can afford it, please donate whatever you can to help expand this channel and my presidential campaign, and I will catch you in the next one. Thank you for watching. Have a good day.